Anything that causes you to overreact or underreact can control you, and often does. So that was just a super quick bit from David Allen's classic book, Getting Things Done. And here today to discuss it with me is Josh McNary, back for the second time. So Josh, good to have you back.
I'm back, yes. Back to talk about another great book.
Another great book. This was from a long time ago, too. I was looking to see, I first read it, I think, in like late 2008. So it's been a minute. But I credit it with a lot of where I am today. So I'm anxious to get into some of that. But as always, you picked the book here. So why'd you pick this one? And yeah, why don't you kick us off?
It's a similar story there for me. I mean, it was around that same time frame. I was in a job at that point. I had made a move back to the Midwest. And I remember using my Franklin Covey planner kind of with the 7 Habits, another old good book, mentality on it. And when I got into the late aughts, the digitization of everything we were doing was really becoming paramount. And it was, this doesn't work anymore to be writing in a notepad, trying to transfer these tasks and prioritize these tasks every day in the way I had been before. This book was eye-opener at the time, and it's still just amazingly valuable to any knowledge worker, anybody that's on a computer all day like we are, to be able to weed through all of the amazing opportunities and challenges that we have in our daily life, in our modern life.
Yeah, I was looking back. When I used this, I was using Noseby. Did you ever use Noseby back in the day for task stuff?
I think I tinkered with it.
Yeah, way back 20 years ago. It was fantastic. But yeah, it really kind of shaped how I did things. I say my company wouldn't exist today without this book, just because I was trying to build the company while I had a full-time job and a young family, and trying to juggle all that stuff just wouldn't have happened. I remember not long after I got in this book, I looked back, I pulled like an old computer out with my old email account, and I saw all the emails and clutter and chaos I used to have. I'm like, I couldn't have pulled it off with that until this sort of kicked my butt and got me in gear and did a great job.
Well, and it's in the last 20 years, I mean, it's only amplified.
Yes,
the
for sure.
inputs are just that much higher. And I mean, think about it, Mickey. Back then, I mean, the mobile phone, the smartphone wasn't really even a thing. We were still using Blackberries and stuff back then.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, I think I'll start. One of my favorite parts of this book is talking about the week before vacation and how great everyone is the week before vacation, if you can make that your daily life. So he says from the book, quote, "Most people feel best about their work the week before their vacation, but it's not because of the vacation itself. What do you do the last week before you leave on a vacation? You clean up, close up, clarify, and renegotiate all your agreements with yourself and others. I suggest you do this weekly instead of yearly." And that's been huge. I do that every Friday. I kind of go through everything, make sure my inbox is clean, make sure my calendar's set up, make sure appointments are solidified, and it's fantastic. It's the same idea. Almost everyone does this for vacations, but not as many do it consistently.
Well, it's about expectations, your own expectations. So that's a theme that comes out through the various tactics that David Allen talks about. Those agreements that you're making with yourself. Mm-hmm. So I've historically been very good about making those agreements with myself in a given day. But it's hard. It's hard in the stealing again from Stephen Covey's methodologies, the important but not urgent matter of reviewing
yes.
what you're doing is not an easy thing. But when you're going on vacation, going back to the quote, I mean, you're going on vacation, that's the day. You have to figure it out and have to feel good about it before you leave so you can go enjoy your vacation. So if we can allow ourselves to stop and use some time to plan, whether it's a day, a week, a month, quarter, a year, right before vacation, whatever it may be, right. that's a critical factor to making sure you feel good about what work you've laid out for yourself. And that's what this book is really all about, is figuring out what work you want to do, not just all the inputs that are coming in, what output you choose to do. And
gotcha.
This book really launched that whole concept, at least in my mind, coming from studying productivity back in the late 90s in high school and on.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned the Eisenhower matrix, the important and urgent stuff. I think that's been around a bit longer, but you raised an interesting point there. You said going on vacation, you're forced to do this stuff. And I think that might be the problem, is on any given week or day, people don't feel forced to do it. And so you have to force yourself to do it. And that's where I think a lot of people fall short, is they say, I can let it slide. I don't have to until vacation comes. But if you can get in the habit of forcing yourself to, like, I have to get this cleaned up on Friday. I have to get this cleaned up before I close my computer. Michael Hyatt, if you ever do the full focus planner, he's very big about your workday shutdown ritual and what tasks you need to accomplish before you end your workday. And that doesn't have to tie into this, but often does. Before I end the workday, I'm going to get my tasks for tomorrow set up. I'm going to get my inbox cleaned out. I'm going to kind of just get my ducks in a row, and that can make a huge difference. David talks about, a big thing he talks about is having a mind like water, which is such an interesting metaphor, but it works so well. I think this was from the book, or maybe from a podcast, but he said, he talks a lot about having a mind like water, meaning we will respond appropriately to new things that come our way. Just like a pond will provide a small splash when you toss in a small rock and a big splash from a big rock, we should scale our responses appropriately. And I think that's huge from this. If you have your world in shape, you know your inbox is cleaned out, you know what's coming up. When something comes into your world, you can respond appropriately. Versus if you're chaos and something comes in your world, it kind of hits you like you said. It becomes the urgent but not important. But because it's urgent, you don't know what your priorities are. You're just going to do it. Whereas if you have your stuff together, you say, okay, that's urgent, but it's not important. I need to focus on important things because you have things in shape. And that mind like water is fantastic.
Yeah, that mind like water concept to me just says have a system. Mm-hmm. That's how you're able to have a mind like water. And
yes, for sure.
You and I know each other long enough, type A-ish type personalities. We like systems and operations and things. And this book, in my experience, it's that type of person that really enjoys this book. Although I think anybody, even free spirits, can find their way through this book and gain some kind of value out of it. But I mean, back when I initially read it, he was talking about having a solid filing system for paper and having inboxes and such like that. And of course, again, that was in that transitional phase at the time from really kind of the more analog world of that time to the digital world that we really live in today.
Yeah.
But that was the system. How do you manage this across your desk?
Yeah.
Well, now we have systems to manage the emails coming across our desk or the notifications that pop up or whatnot. And then if we have those inboxes, those collection places to put all the tasks that are coming in, all the inputs, and then we build that review process on whatever interval we're talking about in to manage those items, we don't have to worry about, are we forgetting that one thing that was nagging us in the middle of the night? Well, we won't be nagged in the middle of the night because we won't be thinking about it because it'll be in our trusted system. Building a trusted system. And that's really the practical side of the getting things done methodology and the book is getting that system in place. And then that allows you to really have that mind like water and hopefully sleep a little better at night.
Yeah, you said one word that I think is enormous there, trusted. Like, it's not a system you think you trust or you say you trust. Like, it has to be deep in your soul that you know if you put something in there, you'll get back to it eventually. It'll bubble up appropriately. You can't think you might or hope you will because then your mind's going to sort of keep it in a loop somewhere in the back. And if you can put in a trusted system, it vanishes from your brain. It's fantastic. We can just kind of put that off to the side, and once you have that trusted system, you'll feel it. It just disappears from your mind because your mind knows, like, it's in a safe place. I know I'll get back to it. I don't have to keep it in that loop, and that makes a huge difference. And there's so many different trusted systems. We could get into all the tools and stuff over the years, but even something simple like Apple Notes or something like that, just if your body knows, like, okay, Apple Notes is secure, I've used it for years, it's great, I'll see stuff in there, it won't get buried at the bottom, like, cool, you drop something in there and it's great.
Right. It doesn't matter what tool. It really doesn't. It's trusted.
Paper is fine too, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we don't need to get into specific tools because if someone watches this in like 6 months, that'll probably be different tools by
Correct,
then.
Yes.
But for me, having many different tools. So I actually have multiple trusted inboxes. Or when I teach this, I usually talk about that's like the refrigerator. That's where all the ingredients are at. That's where all the stuff is at. And then I bring them together. I look at them every day. I go to those refrigerators and I figure out what do I have in those refrigerators? And then I figure out from there, okay, here's what I'm going to make today. Here's what these items. Now I'm not going to use everything in the refrigerator because I either can't or maybe I need another piece. Something else is coming tomorrow in the grocery order or whatever. I'm going to need to do that. Nice. But the idea is that I'm going to decide what am I going to make today, and that's going back to that expectations, so those agreements component that we were talking about earlier, is figuring out what are we trying to do for ourselves, for our own expectations in whatever time frame we're talking about. And of course, then it's a skill to also learn what you can fit in a period or a day when you're planning that. But then you're saying, okay, when you get to the end of the day, okay, I've done these things I said I was going to do today or this week again or whatever period we're planning. But back there in the refrigerator, there's a bunch of other stuff that needs to be made. And then that's when you start the next cycle. And that's life. That's life, and that's the reality of our work in 2024.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, an organized refrigerator is key, though, too. So, you're not having to think about what's in there. You can just know that it's in there and ready for you. And,
having a refrigerator probably is the first thing. But then, yes, you're right. Having it organized getting better dividers in there so you can find what you're looking for.
Right.
So we want to extend the analogy.
Yeah, my mother, to take it one step further, my mother-in-law's dream refrigerator is at the back of it is like a garbage disposal. So you add new stuff in, and the stuff at the back just kind of gets trashed, which would be great, but that also is a sign that you don't know what's in there, and kind of that'd be a problem for your analogy pretty badly there. So yeah.
Well, I mean, the idea of throwing things away in your tasks, or in just one more thing on the analogy, going in there and cleaning out the junk, right? The stuff that's went bad.
For sure.
That is definitely part of the system here too, and David Allen speaks about that as the idea of doing, delegating, deferring, or trashing, or removing items from your system. And again, once you have the system in place, that's a lot easier to do, and then you're doing it on a regular review basis, and you're able to actually make sure that you're not wasting your time with things that maybe at one moment seemed like a good idea, but either you don't have the capacity to do right now, or maybe it's a situation where you add that to a someday maybe list, a place that you're going to look at only on a more irregular interval, maybe quarterly or annually or something, to bring back in the future, because right now in this season of life you can't do that.
Yeah. You mentioned, so with that, and you mentioned a few times, is inboxes. And back when the book came out, the inboxes were like your email inbox and your voicemail inbox and the inbox on your desk with papers. And now we have like our email inbox and then other digital inboxes. But that's probably the biggest tactical thing this book taught me very quickly, was inbox zeros, just keeping your inbox cleaned out. And again, zero is almost a misnomer. I usually have one or two that hang out for a day. Like, it's rarely at zero, but it's almost never more than 3. I keep it pretty much at empty. And that made just such a massive difference, because otherwise, every time you open your email inbox, you're having to reprioritize things and see what's in there. And again, if a new rock hits, you don't know how to respond to it because you're not quite sure what you have there. But if you put things on your calendar and put them in your task list and have things together, you can take care of that. Merlin Mann had a great video that came out around the time of this book. I think it was like 2007 he came out with it. He spoke at Google, but it's fantastic. But he says, for any email you get, you should delete, delegate, respond, defer, or do. And like, as David says in the book, there's the 2-minute rule. If you can do it in under 2 minutes, just do it now. Don't save it for later and figure out what to do later and let it sit there and pile up. Like, if you get an email that says, oh, Josh wants to meet with me, let me say yes or no and put it on the calendar, and then get rid of it. And people get scared of that. Like, I don't want to clean. I need to keep my emails. Like, there's an archive function in there that you can, that every email system has. Actually, I talked to a guy a couple weeks ago. He didn't realize that. He thought archive meant it was gone. He thought archive was trash. No, just try it. Let's go with me. Let's archive that email. Now search for it. And it comes back up. So I have, 800,000 emails or something between my two main inboxes, but none in the inbox itself. I still keep them just in case, which is kind of silly almost. But we all need them from time to time. You don't know what you'll need.
But this is a practical manner from a standpoint of where this methodology is went, and maybe where we're going. Right? Because there's technologies on this steady march.
Mm-hmm.
But back in that period when the book came out, his contributions to these ideas, email wasn't as easy as it is.
Right, yeah.
We sound really old now.
Yeah, for real.
Email was more difficult to manage, and that archive button wasn't as common back then. It was just delete or put it in some folder or something.
Yep.
And so that's all gotten much easier. Cheaper storage. It's much easier to search your email and find things. Just this week, I had to find an email from about 5 years ago for a receipt I was looking for, and I had no idea when that receipt happened, but I was easily able to find it because of the search functionalities of Gmail. So that's all changed quite a bit, and only will continue to change. There's the idea though of you were talking about the different the do, delegate, defer, and delete concepts. That's become more complicated though too, because there are different tools and ways of kind of maybe automating elements of that within the tool set that we currently have. And furthermore, as I was speaking to earlier, the inputs are just so astronomically higher. So that idea of 2 minutes to do a thing. Yes, that is the rule that David Allen talks about. And that is still true for many instances. But there's a lot of 2-minute things in your inbox every day. Yeah. And if you aren't careful, then it becomes a situation where you start just doing the things, you never get to the planning part, and then you end up, the whole day's gone. But in a similar way, I wanted to bring up the idea of the opposite, which is something that maybe is a critique of the getting things done method, which is if you start planning, you start manipulating your tasks. You put everything into this inbox, into the refrigerator, and then you're organizing the refrigerator, like we were talking about earlier. and then you're doing that for a good chunk of the day and kind of messing with your system and never getting to the doing.
You're calling me out
then
directly
you're not
here.
doing. Right. Well, I mean, it's a very common thing.
Yeah.
So the idea of, okay, putting a time box on how much we're going to do, particularly in the daytime set, whereas maybe doing the weekly or monthly or quarterly or annual planning is the important but not urgent work that we avoid for that reason. It's also very easy to procrastinate by saying, well, I'm planning.
Yep.
And so that's kind of flipping this all the way around, going from the discussion of the email practicality elements, but then going into talking about, let's make sure we're not over planning either. And again, I do it too. So that's why I'm saying it. Maybe I'll be better about it tomorrow because I said it on this.
There you go. Yeah, it reminds me. So that Merlin Mann video, I'll put it in the show notes just for people that haven't seen it since we're bringing it up again. But one thing he talks about is great. At the beginning of the video, he says, pretend you're working in a sandwich shop and you get an order in for a new sandwich, a ham sandwich. Cool, you get a ham sandwich. Then another order comes in, ham and cheese. All right, cool, you get a ham and cheese. And then a turkey and cheese comes in here. Okay, cool. I'm going to put the ones with meat together. I'll organize that and I'll put the cheese ones over to this side. How am I going to do the orders? And then, just a grilled cheese. Cool, that goes in the cheese pile. Like, no, your job is not to organize this stuff. Your job is to make sandwiches. Just make the sandwiches, move on. And that's what you're kind of saying. People like, I can sort my email this way and I can have these folders for this. Like, no. You got an email from Josh. He wants an answer. Give him the answer, archive it, and move on. Don't get too cute with your systems, which, again, I say that as the guy that gets way too cute with all of his systems, but in theory, just knock stuff out. Yeah.
Well, and you can end up going back to the book advice is that you could very quickly send, say, that 2-minute or 5-minute email that you could have just done in the inbox into your system. Mm-hmm. And then it would have taken you at least that long to manage it in the system before you come back and do it. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Now, there could be a benefit to my point is that there could be a benefit. Okay, there are 3 or 4 messages that are all similar that you could bundle and get those into your system and connect them somehow in your system. I use digital tools, so I mean, that's pretty easy to do. But connect them in your system in a way that, okay, now I'm going to do all of those together in a 15-minute block. I'm going to do later in the day because that's a low energy thing. And I want to waste my good energy this morning. Mm-hmm. So when you start getting more advanced in these ideas, that's the way you can start thinking. And by practice, you get better about, what you can actually pull off versus not in your systems and in your own energy and all those things.
I like that. It's kind of an extension of what he taught in the original Getting Things Done book, where he said, have things for when you're in the car, things when you're on the phone. Like, we're just on the computer most of the time now, but you're saying inside of that on the computer time, I can bundle these similar emails. You can still bundle like tasks together. So, yeah, I love that.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I've done.
Yeah, so we're getting near the end of time. There's one more thing I want to hit, and then I'll give you a moment for anything else. But one thing I loved, I heard him say in a podcast, I probably repeated more than anything else that ties to the book. I don't think this was in the book, but I'll read what he said on the show. He said, the whole idea of GTD, getting things done, about being present is that you can't really focus your reflective brain fully on being present if you're distracted. If you need cat food and thought, gee, I need cat food, and it pops up more than once, you are inappropriately engaged with your cat, and you need cat food could pop up and take brain bandwidth when you're trying to focus. So my whole thought is only think about cat food once. If you think you need cat food, great. Put it in your trusted system on your shopping lists in Apple Notes or Google Keep or whatever, and get it out of your brain. If you keep thinking, don't forget the cat food, I got to remember to get, what are you doing, man? Like, you're wasting so much brain power on cat food when you can put it there. And that applies to anything. If you have something that just keeps tickling around in your mind, it's either because you haven't put it in your trusted system or you don't fully trust your system. You put it there, but your brain won't let it go because it doesn't really trust it. And so, yeah, only think about cat food once is kind of my mantra to describe the entire book. But what kind of closing thoughts would you have for this to kind of put a bow on it?
Well, I would say that any of you that might be listening to this that have used or have approached getting things done methodology, whether formally or informally, know that it's an ongoing battle.
Yes.
We're battling our own minds and the way we think, and we're kind of trying to hack our own mindsets of how we think and our own expectations around ourselves. And if you haven't tried these things before, a few of the cautionary tales that Mickey and I have talked about here probably could help. But also realize that you can get great gains out of an imperfect system, and that's where not over planning the system can be wise. So I would encourage you to read the book. I had fun kind of going back and revisiting it a bit here because I hadn't done that for a little while. And perhaps put it on a cycle of coming back to it regularly, which I used to do on some of these great books back in the old days when I was first starting my career.
Well, that's kind of what I try to do with this podcast.
Right. Yeah.
This cycle. Yeah.
It's fun, right? Because you've read these books and now we can come back to them. So anyways, take it, learn from it, evolve with it, and getting things done can certainly allow you to do that if you apply even part of the techniques that are described in that book.
Yep, I love that, and I don't want to extend this too much here, but I love what you said. Imperfect systems can be great. I'm bad about that too. I'll say, how are you still using Evernote? Evernote's so old. Obsidian's better. There's backlinks. There's all this stuff. But if it works for you, it works for you. Like I tend to play with tools again to a bad degree. So if you have a system that's imperfect but does the job, like cool, it does the job. If you trust it, if it has things in there for you, like you don't think you need to tweak and be perfect. Just have a trusted system of some sort, and it'll do remarkable things. And keep your inbox empty. That's my other big push. I get people on, but easier said than done. So, Joshua, this is fantastic as always. How can people find and learn more about you?
Sure. So it's McNaryMarketing.com is my website. I have a regular tech e-newsletter I send out. That's McNaryMarketing.com/subscribe if you want to keep up on business technology and all things happening in the tech space.
Cool. I'll have a link to that in the show notes along with that video from Merlin. And yeah, go check it out. And if you haven't read this book, yeah, you're 15 years late, but it's never too late. So go check it out now. So awesome. Appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
See ya.